These are the football players who shouldn't exist. From the goalkeeper who was legally blind to the striker who weighed more than a small car, these athletes broke every rule about what makes a professional footballer. By the end of this list, you'll question everything you thought you knew about human limitations. 10. The heavyweight beast, Adebayo Akinfenwa. Meet Adebayo Akinfenwa, a striker who weighs over 100 kilograms and can bench press twice his body weight. Built like a nightclub bouncer, every club told him he was too big for football, so he proved them wrong. After bouncing between 5 clubs in just 5 months and failing a medical for being too large, Akinfenwa went on Sky Sports News and begged any coach to WhatsApp him a job offer. AFC Wimbledon answered, and over 200 games later, including a strike against Liverpool in the FA Cup, the beast proved size doesn't matter. 9. The cancer survivor, Sebastian Haller. You've just signed for Borussia Dortmund after scoring 11 Champions League goals. Then, 12 days later, doctors tell you that you have cancer. Sebastian Haller felt stomach pain during training with Ivory Coast, but thought it was nothing. An MRI revealed testicular cancer. After 2 surgeries and 4 rounds of chemotherapy, Haller returned and scored a hat-trick in 8 minutes in his first game back. The ultimate redemption, scoring the winning goal as Ivory Coast won the African Cup of Nations on home soil, from cancer patient to national hero. 8. The one-armed wonder, Alex Sanchez. Born with only one hand, Alex Sanchez was told football wasn't for him. At 15, Real Zaragoza called him up anyway. He scored 12 goals in 10 reserve games, earning his La Liga debut, the first one-handed player in Spain's top flight. After leaving Zaragoza, he conquered Australia with 34 goals in 44 games, then headed to India at age 34, where he became the league's top scorer. One hand, 3 countries, multiple golden boots. 7. The shortest giant, Jorge Campos. The average goalkeeper is 6 feet 2 inches. Jorge Campos stood at 5 feet 6 inches and was told he was too short, so he decided to become a striker as well, because why limit yourself to one impossible dream? Starting as second choice at Pumas, Campos asked to play outfield instead of warming the bench. Result? 14 goals as one of the league's top scorers while supposedly being a goalkeeper. His agility eventually earned him the keeper spot, helping Pumas win the 1990-91 championship. By the 1994 World Cup, this tiny goalkeeper was ranked 3rd best in the entire tournament. Campos had become such a cheat code that FIFA literally changed the rules in 1998, banning goalkeepers from playing outfield in the same match. They created a rule specifically to stop one man. Campos finished his career with 34 goals, more than most strikers manage. He didn't just break the goalkeeper mold, he obliterated it. 6. The crash helmet hero, Petr Cech. In 2006, Stephen Hunt's knee fractured Petr Cech's skull so severely that emergency brain surgery was needed to save his life. Doctors inserted metal plates and told him his career was over. 3 months later, Cech returned wearing a protective helmet that became his trademark. Against all medical advice, he was back diving at players' feet. He won 3 more Premier League Golden Gloves and was named Europe's best goalkeeper twice. After retiring from football, he became a professional ice hockey goalie because one dangerous sport wasn't enough. 5. The miracle survivor, Bobby Charlton. In 1958, Manchester United had assembled one of the most talented young squads in football history, known as the Busby Babes. Bobby Charlton was the crown jewel of this team, a midfielder with the vision of a poet and the shot of a cannon. They'd just beaten Red Star Belgrade 5-4 in the European Cup quarterfinals and were favourites to win the whole tournament. On the flight back from Belgrade, the team had to stop in Munich for refueling. Heavy snow covered the runway and conditions were worsening by the minute. The plane tried to take off several times, but technical issues forced the passengers to disembark. When they were told to get back on board, Charlton made a decision that saved his life. He swapped seats and moved to the back of the plane. On the next takeoff attempt, disaster struck. The aircraft hit a fence at the end of the runway, crashed into a house and a tree, and split completely in half. 8 Manchester United players died that day, along with 15 other people on board. Charlton's seat was flung from the wreckage and his teammates thought he was dead, but somehow, miraculously, he survived. The teammate he'd swapped seats with, Duncan Edwards, considered by many to be the greatest English player who ever lived, wasn't so lucky. 2 weeks later, while other survivors were being told they'd never play football again, Charlton was released from hospital. Despite feeling slow as an old cart horse, he returned to playing football just 1 month after the crash. The mental scars ran deeper than any physical injury, but Charlton and Manchester United rebuilt from the tragedy in the most remarkable way possible. 8 years later, Charlton captained United to the European Cup final, the trophy they'd been chasing when the crash happened. He scored twice as United became the first English team to lift the European Cup. That same year, he helped England win the World Cup and was awarded the Ballon d'Or. Bobby Charlton didn't just survive a plane crash, he conquered world football while carrying the memory of his fallen teammates. That's not just resilience, that's the stuff of legend. 4. The half-blind hero, Gordon Banks. After winning the 1966 World Cup with England, Gordon Banks was on top of the world. The Stoke City goalkeeper had set a record of 721 minutes without conceding for his country and was considered one of the greatest shot stoppers who ever lived. Then, in 1972, everything went horribly wrong. Banks was driving his car when he attempted to overtake on a tight bend and crashed into a ditch. Glass from the windscreen smashed into his face and eye, requiring 200 stitches. Doctors told him he might lose the eye completely as glass fragments had gotten deep into the socket. His sight in his right eye never returned, effectively ending his goalkeeping career at the highest level. But this is where the story gets incredible. 4 years later, Banks decided he wasn't finished with football. At age 36, this half-blind goalkeeper crossed the Atlantic to play in the North American Soccer League against legends like Pelé, George Best, and Franz Beckenbauer. Despite being blind in one eye, a disability that should have made goalkeeping impossible, Banks showed he still had magic in his gloves. Playing for Fort Lauderdale Strikers, he conceded only 29 goals in 26 games, giving his team the best defensive record in the entire league. The man with one functioning eye was named NASL Goalkeeper of the Year and selected for the All-Star team. He was playing against some of the greatest footballers in history and proving he was still the best goalkeeper in America. Banks finally retired at age 40, cementing his status as one of the most remarkable athletes in any sport. How do you make world-class saves when you can only see half the pitch? Banks never explained his secret, but somehow this half-blind legend made the impossible look routine. 3. The Goggled Warrior, Edgar Davids. Edgar Davids was born in Suriname and moved to Europe to chase his football dreams. After being rejected twice by Ajax, they finally gave him a chance and he repaid them by helping win 3 league titles and the Champions League. But just as his career was taking off, disaster struck in the form of an invisible enemy. Davids was diagnosed with glaucoma, a degenerative condition that damages the optic nerve and causes gradual blindness. For a footballer whose career depended on split-second reactions and perfect vision, this was potentially catastrophic. The ferocious midfielder known as the Pitbull was famous for seeing red on the pitch, but without treatment, he wouldn't be able to see anything at all. After surgery in 1999, Davids was worried his career might be over. But then came the solution that would make him one of football's most iconic figures: special protective goggles. There was just one problem: he needed FIFA's permission to wear them, plus approval for the eye drops he required. Fortunately, FIFA granted permission, but the challenges were far from over. The goggles would steam up during matches, and it took Davids months to get used to playing while wearing them. Worse still, some players mocked his new appearance. Dutch defender Jaap Stam sneered, "We're playing football, not going skiing." That was a mistake. Davids saw red, metaphorically, since his vision was actually improving, and made sure Stam regretted those words. The Dutch midfielder picked up 25 red cards throughout his career, often losing his temper when opponents thought his goggles made him weak. But Davids proved them all wrong, enjoying a stellar career with Ajax, Juventus, Barcelona, AC Milan, and even a stint at Tottenham. His iconic goggles became so famous that Nike featured him in major advertising campaigns, and he appeared on FIFA video game covers. The man who was going blind became one of the most recognizable footballers of his generation. Sometimes the coolest look comes from the most serious circumstances. 2. The Tourette's champion, Tim Howard. Growing up with Tourette's syndrome should have ended Tim Howard's football dreams before they began. The condition causes involuntary tics, facial jerks, and an overwhelming urge to perform random actions. Imagine trying to concentrate on goalkeeping when your brain is constantly ordering you to touch the goalpost or adjust your gloves. To make matters worse, Howard was also diagnosed with OCD, creating a double challenge that would have broken most people. During matches, his mind would demand he perform specific rituals, and if he didn't comply, his heart would start pounding and he'd struggle to breathe. When his mother tried to get help from his school, they refused to believe Howard had a genuine medical condition, no matter how much evidence she provided. But everything changed when a doctor told Howard something that would transform his life. Sometimes kids with these disorders have special gifts. Howard discovered that when the ball came near him, everything else would blur away, leaving just the ball in crystal clear focus. He used this hyperfocus to his advantage, spending hours practicing and imagining he was Pelé. The US national team eventually identified him as a future star and placed him in their Olympic development program. His big break came at Manchester United, but a costly error in the Champions League against Mourinho's Porto shattered his confidence. However, this setback led to his true calling at Everton, where he made over 400 appearances and became a club legend nicknamed the Secretary of Defence. Howard's crowning moment came in the 2014 World Cup against Belgium, where he broke the record for most saves in a single World Cup match. His heroics were so remarkable that American fans started chanting his name from the stands. In 2024, Howard was inducted into the US Soccer Hall of Fame. He now uses his platform to raise awareness for Tourette's syndrome, proving that what makes you different can also make you extraordinary. 1. The Little Brown Bird, Garrincha. Manuel Francisco dos Santos was born with a right leg 6 centimeters shorter than his left, a twisted spine and deformed feet. Doctors certified him as disabled. He was shorter than most kids his age, illiterate and wild beyond belief. His sister nicknamed him Garrincha, Little Brown Bird, because of his size and the way he seemed to flutter around. His upbringing was chaotic in ways that would make tabloid journalists blush. He grew up in extreme poverty and was completely uneducated, but somehow, this collection of disadvantages would forge one of the greatest footballers who ever lived. Garrincha had no interest in becoming a professional player and didn't turn pro until his late teens, when he was already married with the first of his eventual 14 children. But in his first training session for Botafogo, he did something that left Brazilian international Nilton Santos speechless. He dribbled the ball through the defender's legs like he was playing with a child. By 1957, Garrincha was the second highest scorer in the Rio de Janeiro State League, forcing Brazil to include him in their 1958 World Cup squad. In a warm-up game against Italian side Fiorentina, he scored one of the most legendary goals ever captured on film, dribbling past 4 players and the goalkeeper, stopping on the goal line, then dribbling past another defender before scoring. But Brazil's coaches thought he was too irresponsible and dropped him for the first 2 games of the tournament. When they finally gave him a chance in the third match against the USSR, he hit the post in the first minute. In the final against Sweden, Garrincha provided 2 assists as Brazil won their first World Cup. But his greatest moment came in that same year during a match against Argentina's River Plate. Garrincha toyed with his opponents so mercilessly, sometimes pretending to forget the ball so defenders would chase him, that he inspired the crowd to create the first ever Olé chant, which is now heard in football stadiums around the world. Despite offers from Real Madrid, Juventus, and AC Milan, Garrincha stayed loyal to Brazilian football. For the national team, he achieved something that sounds impossible. Brazil never lost a single game when both Garrincha and Pelé played together. The 1962 World Cup proved he could carry Brazil alone. When Pelé got injured early in the tournament, Garrincha took over. He scored a curling masterpiece against England, then grabbed 2 more goals in the semi-final. Despite getting a fever before the final that should have ruled him out, Garrincha helped Brazil lift their 2nd consecutive World Cup and was named player of the tournament. FIFA named him alongside Pelé and Maradona as one of the 3 forwards in their team of the century. They called him the Little Brown Bird, but we call him the GOAT, the greatest example of how football can transform the impossible into the inevitable. These players didn't just overcome obstacles, they obliterated the very concept of limitations. In a sport obsessed with physical perfection, they proved that the most important muscle is the one between your ears. If you enjoyed watching these impossible humans defy reality, there's another video on screen that will show you even more athletes who rewrote the laws of physics.